with Heroic Girls. And I am also acting as producer Patty today because it's her birthday and she went out with the kids. And so I'm doing two jobs. We're going to review the book and we're going to do the producer's job. I'm having no trouble with that whatsoever. There's that. There. Okay. All right. There we go. And as always, Vivian, a Disney Imagineer and animator. And today we are going to talk about SuperMutant Magic Academy by Jillian Tamaki. This is part of our summer series of Tamakis because last time we did her cousin. But this is a wonderful webcomic that Drawn and Quarterly has bundled together into a single volume. I don't know how long it ran originally, but it looks like it went on for quite a while. And so yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about it. So Vivian, do you want to do the honors summing up, or would you like me to take a crack at it?
Ooh, okay. Well, so this was a serialized comic that was drawn over the course of 4 years before it was, ended and compiled. And it takes place in, I think, what we could call kind of a cross between maybe like a Hogwarts and a Xavier School of Extraordinary Mutants. But the scale of the narrative has been brought all the way down into the student level. So rather than sort of having these, there's no Voldemort, there's no, worldwide threat. Everything that's happening is happening within the relationships of the students, within their own minds, their relationships with themselves and with one another. So it's very, very sweet story, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what I had actually made the exact same analysis of it being a cross between Hogwarts and the Xavier Academy. It's a fantastical setting for very mundane topics. It's just about the inner feelings of kids going to high school, and yet some of them can, shoot lasers out of their eyes and cast spells and things like that. It's almost incidental. It is kind of interesting. I would love to talk to Jillian at some point and ask why she chose this fantastic setting to explore these topics. It works completely. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just curious what her motivation was to do that. I think our main protagonist, which takes a while to figure out who might be the right one. There are a lot of characters here.
Yes.
It is very episodic. It is not a lot of through line to the stories, and they're always throwing new characters at you. So it takes a while before you can kind of figure out who the main people are. But I decided Frances was our main character. I think by the end of the book, that's fairly clear. She's our primary protagonist. Okay, go ahead. Are you?
Do you mean Marcia?
Oh, I do mean Marcia. I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, it's okay.
I do mean Marcia.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, Frances is the chain-smoking nihilist performance art woman. We'll talk about her in a minute. Yeah. Yes, I do mean Marcia. I do mean Marcia. I think, she's at the beginning, a closeted lesbian, although we know she's a lesbian. No one else knows she's a lesbian. She is rooming with Wendy, who is a fox girl, and they're roommates, and she has the unrequited crush on Wendy, who is completely oblivious that is happening in the background. And again, not a lot of through story. So you pick this up in little bits and pieces going as you go forward. It takes a long time. When she knew she was wrapping up the book, I think she decided to kind of like make the narrative a little more cohesive so she could give a good ending to these characters. The book ends with prom and graduation and the possible accidental fulfillment of prophecy. So it does become a little bit more traditional of a traditional narrative towards the end of the book. So I'm going to run through the characters because they have so many great characters in this book, and it reminds me of something like Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, where they just throw you in the middle of it and they just keep introducing more characters. At some point you realize who everybody is, and then you flip backwards to reread it because now you understand who these people are. And so we have Frances, who is a performance artist who is going to smash the patriarchy and does all these kind of stereotypical bizarre performance art things where she's like nude covered in cotton balls or trying to remember some of the other ones. She made
a suit to reflect the male gaze back.
Right. Yeah, she had a suit, and where her breasts, vagina, and butt were big eyeballs to look
Giant
back at the male gaze.
eyeballs.
Giant eyeballs. That was kind of awesome. She made a beautiful statue, and then the teacher was complimenting and said, "Who did this?" And he said, "Wait." She came up and smashed it with a hammer in front of him and said, "Now it's finished."
She sat on a toilet in the middle of the hallway, which that was actually just a great visual gag of like thinking she's reading, she's on the toilet, she's at school, she's doing performance art.
Right. And so it's so we have Frances, we have her, we have Marcia, who again I think we've identified as our main character. Gemma is this girl with a large head. I don't know if we have quite figured out if Gemma's supposed to be something specific or just happens to have a very big head. Wendy the Fox Girl, Evan the Everlasting Boy, one of my favorite reoccurring gags in the book.
Yes.
He is a character that cannot die, and we see him over and over again just existing for millennia as he deteriorates, the world deteriorates around him, sometimes actively trying to die and just failing and just existing in pain and agony for forever. It's hilarious. But, the Trixie, who is a lizard girl, who just very standard teenager, actually doesn't seem to be anything too unusual there. Veronica, who is a cat girl, only in a couple panels. I wrote down her name and I realized she didn't show up a lot. Trevor,
she's straight up a cat. So I think that's because
she's the one that the cat that slapped the cat. Veronica was the one. There's a cat that's a character, and then there's another one.
And she slapped. That's right.
It's like the cat said something to her, and she was offended.
With her eyes.
Yeah. So they have an actual cat, which is one you're referring to, and they never learn its name. It's been accepted as a student because it's going to be valuable in the end of days, according to a prophecy. And it just
has a uniform.
It has a uniform, and then for a while they think it's cute. Then it's like licking its own butt in front of them, and they're grossed out. It just wanders in and out of the scene. Trevor, who is I'm going to say he's a mutant. He's the guy that can shoot lasers out of his eyes and is a bit of a vandal. He seems to be a bit of a jerk sometimes. And then we have Mrs. Grimdorf. That's their Dumbledore analog. We don't see her very often. She's mentioned more than she's seen. And, okay, got two more. Adam, who's Wendy's boyfriend, and Cheddar, the smooth-talking underachiever, who kind of slipped in there. And for a while, I was like not sure he was going to stick around. And then by the end of it, he's a much bigger character than you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have all these characters. It's very episodic. You learn a little bit about them. You learn about them a little bit at a time. It's a building with small pieces, and it takes you a while to get more complete and more complex portraits of these characters. I really enjoyed it. It reminded me. Building the characters actually reminded me of like the way that I was an addict to this show, Law and Order, the old Law and Order. You never found out. They never had an episode like where you followed Lenny Briscoe home. But by the time he left, I knew he was twice divorced. He had a daughter. I knew all this stuff, and you had to pick it up as you went up. That was after.
That's a really good analogy.
Episodes of you had to pick up these little bits as you went along because they never really focused on those issues. But after you've watched it for a long time, you could absorb some of that information. So it's basically a high school setting, and it's about a group of friends and acquaintances who aren't quite friends but know each other, and how they're getting along in high school leading up to prom. I assumed it was also graduation, but I'm not positive of that. I don't think they really said. They could be coming back next year, but So
I think definitely Cheddar, Wendy, Marcia. There's definitely a handful of people, the ones who are stressing out about college, right? So there was a group in that that they're going to be graduating, and they're also there was kind of some moments where they're sort of looking down on the freshmen, right? They don't know anything. And I think what's kind of interesting is what you're describing, that there's sort of a core group, and then there's all like a bazillion ancillary characters. Like I have pages of there's also Chaz, who has to be automatized every 3 hours. Like there's all these people that sort of appear and disappear. And I feel like that's actually a lot like how high school is, right? There are people that their name and something kind of maybe like what their deal is, right? And other than that, like, you know, oh, you had this class with them and maybe you never even interact with them again, but there at one point they did have like a fleeting moment of your attention. And you know, these people who are like, maybe you wouldn't be friends through adulthood with, but like at this moment when you're all like, you know, jammed together, taking classes together, living on like on top of each other because they're all in dorms. This is like a, you know, exclusive kind of a uniformed boarding school type situation. It seems like, you know, they're all, you know, they've kind of become like a little bit of like a family unit. You can tell between all of them. So
I think that's, you know, the friends are the family you choose. I think there was a big strong. We don't see a home life existing outside of this campus. It's never like Parents' Day. They don't exist. We don't see them. It's just about how these different characters interact with each other. Some of them have more prominence than others. I also appreciated, although, you know, obviously the characters were somewhat based on different archetypes and stuff. You know, but there was like I said, I called Frances a nihilist because she just I don't think it's possible to create a more cynical character than Frances. She's and to a certain extent Marcia is that way as well, but there will be times where they're reacting in the way you think they should, and then in the last panel they'll be by themselves and you see that whatever that character is reflecting on it and maybe having doubts or issues. We're not pigeonholing anybody into just one thing. Trevor's kind of a jerk, but then there were a couple moments where he does, where you have some sympathy for him, and Frances is this avant-garde artist that's making everyone else uncomfortable the entire time with her performance art. And then one of my favorite bits in the entire thing that she gets called out, says, isn't performance art like that the very 70s anyways? Like, this has been done. And that you could just see the just shock in her face as she realizes that she's not so original as she's
derivative. It's the worst thing could possibly be.
She hated it. So although there are these broad archetypes you could assign to these characters, I think Jillian did a good job of subtly subverting those to make them more than archetypes, to make them complete human beings, complete characters that had more going on than just, oh, it's the school bully, it's the prom queen. You know, there's more there in every single case.
I think for Frances, one of the things that shocked me was how she has a very high emotional intelligence, and she's actually a very good friend. So I think there's times where maybe even Wendy or, you know, Trixie might miss something, and Frances is the one that kind of comes in to say the compassionate thing. Right. And so even though you could say like, oh, she's a nihilist and she's a cynic, she is those things, but she's also acutely aware of, you know, how people feel around her. I think it's Cheddar walks up and invites someone to the dance or invites Frances to a dance. And then when she says yes, he walks away, and she instinctively assures Trixie that like, you're not ugly, you're not going to be alone forever. And I was just like, oh my God, like that's such a great moment for that character. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
For me, that moment for Trevor, the first one, laser eyes kid, who, you know, he graffitis, asks where the trash can is so that he can pee in it, not throw something away. You know, like this, he's just he's so obnoxious, you know, sexist. Right. And one of the moments that I loved with him was his when they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he's embodying a female character who's you know, who's like, love has saved her life and now is dying, right? And he's trying to bandage the wounds, and they're like weeping over his body.
From his bodice.
Rends the cloth from his bodice and binds the wounds. Like there's like your flowing hair over his, and it was just such a moment of like, and then he and his friend like clutching each other's hands, and it's like, all right, look, that's a good place to end for today. And just that he's got, you know, he's got depths. He's an onion, right? He's got things inside of him that are, you know,
and I love the last panel of that episode, because it's them riding bikes home together, and both like at this point they're like the guys that keep one seat in between them in the theater because they just got I mean, they just basically reenacted some scenes from a Harlequin romance novel, and then all of a sudden, when that was over and they're kind of out of that mode, they're like, "What did we just do? Did we just happen?"
he knew where to take it, right?
Yeah.
Like he understood the emotionality of it. So I was kind of like, something that Jillian said that I thought was really interesting was that a lot of the dynamic between the students is something that she views in her own students. So if you think about it that way, then she is more of the, Professor Grimdorf,
right,
than she is one of the students. So I think even though you can sort of carry your high school memories, your immature memories with you, she's also viewing this from like a, from afar a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I think what kind of put me in the mind is I've never met Jillian, but I have met her cousin Mariko, and her cousin looks a tremendous amount like Marsha. I mean, obviously very simplified, but the glasses, about the same type of build and stuff like that. So I was probably making connections that may not be there, and saying, "Oh, this is an avatar for the author," and it may not be that. So I did want to talk about you brought up Dungeons and Dragons. There are a couple of these reoccurring gags, and I jotted some of them down because they're worth discussing. Dungeons and Dragons is one of them. We see multiple groups of people play Dungeons and Dragons at multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, it is this kind of exploration of complicated emotions and things that kids go through in high school. And then sometimes it's just silly and throwaway gags that, not every day's panel. I don't want to say panel. I'm trying to think about what every strip, or something like that. And because it's on the web, they're varying lengths because you can do that. You're not, limited by a newspaper. You have to be this, size exactly to fit. It's that, some of them are just these toss away gags that are really funny. I remember they had a Dungeons and Dragons session where a character that I don't know that we see again declares that he wants to be a lawyer. The other people are like being traditional, and everyone's like, no, it'll be good. I read a thing about party synergy, and then they cut to him going, okay, and the dungeon, everybody looking forward, and the dungeon master going, okay, you're going back to the notary office, and he's shaking dice, going, don't worry, guys, I got this. Which
that was hilarious. Like, yeah, I think the other thing is that this is a world with magic, with prophecies. There's goblins at the school. There's people with a wolf head at the school.
Yeah.
There's invisible people at the school who have to wear human suits. And they still want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And you see, pretty early on that this is a place where there are dragons, right? Because, I think Wendy and Marsha go for a hike and they come across a dragon's egg.
Oh yeah, they find.
so it's funny. Like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like,
Yeah, it's and that's kind of I remember that gag as well. She was, they find the egg, and then just offhandedly they say, I wonder, does every egg of a dragon hatch, or is it like a chicken where if it's not fertilized, it just sits there, and is that involving the yolk? And then they go, I'm just too lazy to look that up, and then the bump at the end is they're sitting in class, and these are 3 animals that lay unfertilized eggs, and the yolk does this. It's all the stuff that they've talked about wanting to look up, and decided they were too lazy to look it up, and it's all on the test. It's interesting how little the fantastical impacts anything. There's never any really mention made of, this person has a cat head and so they're not supposed to be together with a regular human or any, none of that. It's just a way of differentiating the characters.
Trixie being a lizard in no way has impacted her thought that she wouldn't be a young teen model. She'll be a young teen model and a lizard.
And I love that as we go on, we realize that that's is a very stereotypical teenage behavior. That's a kind of a brave front. She feels like she's ugly. She feels like she's trying to project this confidence that she is the kind of girl that could be a model, and she's going to do that and stuff. And at the same time, she's afraid she's this hideous beast, not because she's a lizard, but just because she's a teenage girl. That's one of those. I like that. We have here's some of the other ones. It was Frances doing the bizarre performance art. That's basically Frances' function for the most part in the book, is to do these strange performance pieces, and sometimes they actually seem to be impactful and have something that I grasp to, and sometimes it just seems like they're there to be absurd. You and I both liked the returning the male gaze suit. I thought that was really kind of clever, but a lot of the other ones are not. And then Trevor being a jerk, and and then Evan, the everlasting boy, dying over millennia. They keep showing this and there's you can tell it's a throwaway gag and kind of going into the absurdity at that point, because not all of those futures for him are possible. He can only do one of them, because that is several thousand years in the future, and then a couple weeks later he goes thousands of years into the future in some other way. So it's and I love the fact that the girls are all just swooning over Evan, who doesn't say anything.
Who doesn't say anything. He doesn't move. He doesn't there's that one moment where they're like, oh, he's so cute.
Yeah.
And a tree has grown all around him. Like he's gone full Bran Stark. And he's just his little face sticking out. And he's smiling, and he doesn't got anything to say, but
that's basically his function in the entire thing, except when he took a potato peeler to his own skin. But so we did get one glimpse that Evan has something more complicated than just sitting there too. He may want to die. And then we brought up the D&D, and you brought up that D&D session with Trevor, and that's why I want to bring up. I thought there was a pretty strong run of the male characters experiencing homoerotic thoughts and then having to deal with them and not knowing what to do with them. It came up over and over again. Interestingly, not as much for the female characters. There's a lesbian character that's kind of at the center of the story, but she's not grappling with anything. I think she knows who she is. Whether she's telling other people is a question.
Yeah.
But we had the male characters over and over again end up. There's one where they're playing football, and then the guy just starts talking about how great the quarterback's ass is out there. Yeah. The other guy's like, what are you gay? He said, no, I'm not gay. It's just, this is objective reality. This guy has a great ass.
Yeah, this one too. I was a big fan of they're discussing they're playing bat ball, which is a sport that I would love to watch. And then they're like, they're high-fiving, and then they start making out.
They actually comment on the fact that that a lot of homoerotic tension in sports. The girls do, and then the other one goes, "You're reading too much into it." And the next frame is them making out on the field.
Well, I think what's interesting is that the boy characters are experiencing a lot of homoerotic tension amongst themselves, and then the female characters, they're not experiencing that amongst themselves, but they are experiencing a level of sexual harassment from the boy. So it's almost like the tension within the male group is just spilling out everywhere. Amongst themselves, then onto the female characters as well. Yeah,
I think that the male characters are. This is definitely a female-centric book. The female characters are far better fleshed out than the male characters for the most part, and we focus on them more of them and for longer periods of time. I'm trying to think of the male character. I guess Trevor was probably the one that was the most fleshed out, or by the end, maybe Cheddar.
Yeah, I'd put a shout out to Cheddar in that realm. And I think, let me do a quick check. Oh, one of the gags that made me laugh the hardest was,
if you give me page numbers, I can probably pull it up. Probably.
Oh man. Hang on. It was they were watching they're in the middle of PE, and they were watching a kid run, and apparently he had a funny run.
Yeah, it was a dolphin kid.
His name was Danny.
Yeah. And I'll look for it too. Yeah, they were doing typical kind of teenage kid thing where they're just making cutting remarks about how goofy he looks while he's running. And then one of them says, "You shouldn't do that. It doesn't matter. He can't hear us anyway." And then you see,
and he's Danny just crying,
and I'm like, yeah, I think that sounds pretty accurate too. I think a lot of people have been on both sides of that equation at different times, and yeah, because we called it out and we didn't write down the page number, we're not going to find that thing.
I know, this is my bad. This is like almost a 300-page book.
Yeah, there's a lot of pages to go through here.
But it's very satisfying.
It is. It's very satisfying. I want to talk about the art just for a hot second. Jillian is very capable of having a consistent art style and a level of professionalism that you would expect from a comic artist. When she did One Day in Summer with her cousin, fantastic book. Can't recommend it enough. And that here, you get the feeling the web project was the web comic was a side project, and there were some days where it felt like she was rushed and the panels are rushed. She has a tendency to use fairly strong line art. You know, these are not whisper thin. So I'm gonna make my effort to share my screen. This will go horribly wrong probably, but
I believe in you.
Thank you.
I agree though. I mean, the lines are amazing, and so
Yeah.
I think what she has said about this web comic was that this was just kind of her way of getting out stray thoughts.
Yeah.
And so whatever it else was that she was working on, there was kind of like, you know, stray thoughts ended up over here. And what she's said before is that she has restless hands. And
Right.
so she wants to kind of keep her hands moving. I don't know if you've seen any of her embroidery work, like, which is also absolutely incredible. But I think that's a lot of the charm that this book has, is it has a lot of movement to it because the lines are the way that they are.
Right.
You know, this is because it's like you were saying, it's not at all consistent.
Yeah.
In
there's some beautiful pages.
yeah,
in
it's beautiful. The characters read between, you know, from exactly panel to panel, from strip to strip, right?
Right.
But you know, you also have moments like this where this looks like it was just a scanned pencil drawing, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, she's just
what I was thinking is she probably had like a paying gig for a client, or you know, something that had a deadline, and so she couldn't devote the amount of time to get the idea on paper that she normally could. But it is kind of interesting seeing, like, you know, just almost how she would rough it out, you know, this would be the like kind of thumbnails you would show somebody and go, oh yeah, that works, or maybe you could do this, and so it's like that first draft pencils type of thing. And I mean, if you look at, you know, the page right before it, you know, we had this kind of art, and then we moved to this. So obviously there's huge discrepancy in how much time that she spent on each one.
yeah.
And I will say that most of the book is like the previous page. She's pretty consistent at doing it, but you find these little places here and there where it feels like she might have gotten jammed up a little bit. And I actually enjoy that because it's like kind of a peek behind the scenes of her process, seeing how she would rough out panels and you know, how she would put that together earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that this was like I think because the whole point of this project was more like just to get the thoughts out, right? Like, you know, and this reads, by this point, you know that short hair glasses is Marsha, and you know that bangs and ears is Wendy. So as long as it reads, you know, let it go, release it, right? And she has said that one of her biggest things that she teaches her students is that people have to see what you can do, and you don't know what is going to resonate with people at what level, right? So you can even say, like the panel before, which looks very complete, there's a, you know, I think people could say that this is a sketch, right? It's not colored. The line weights are different. You know, it's a very plain frame. And so, but this in and of itself is a style. The following frame is by itself is also a style. The way that, like, if you go back to the previous one, how heavy the line weight is, like around like the boots and stuff like that. That like there are some panels in this comic where the whole panel is drawn with that thick of a brush. So it kind of gets this like really bloated crayon kind of a look, but again, what it does is it adds so much character to everybody. And, you know, there's a couple of frames where people sort of turning around and looking at each other. It makes their hairs flipping, and you can see, you know, the energy from the way that she moves her finger, like moves the brush, that like everything was, I don't know. It just feels very kinetic and alive. It's very fun.
You know, I think it was on the air. We talked about the fact that she uses this heavy. I just pulled my earphones out. She uses this really heavy line style, which works incredibly well for her. It's a very kind of bold artistic decision, and just gives the characters a lot of weight and presence on the page. And you're right. Sometimes she used that super heavy line on everything. And you know, I tried to find two pages that were the most contrasty as far as a light line and a heavy line. And this is what I came up with. But there are other examples all sprinkled through the book of her using lines of different weights and kind of experimenting. And, you know, again, it's that kind of a luxury that you have when it's a project, it's a personal project that you don't have anybody, at the time paying money for it. You don't have a boss that's telling you that it has to be a certain way or consistent. She can do what she wants to with it. And so, yeah, it was cool seeing her doing different styles all the way through the book. Generally, I think this is kind of her house style. And when she's got the most time and she's trying to be consistent, I imagine that this is where she ends up. You know, the characters with maybe a little bit more going on in the background. But seeing these other ones where you could see different styles that she tried out, or with the heavy line, or with the thin scribbly line, and it was just kind of cool seeing the same characters rendered. You're right that she did a great job in character design, because you can simplify these characters to almost every single character has a unique silhouette that makes them very identifiable with very little work. You know, the characters are very unique. It helps when you can have someone have a lizard head, you know, that makes them stand out a bit. But even without that, she did a good job of figuring out a different profile, a different silhouette for every character, so that they read differently, and you can get the concept of that character across in just a few things. And, you know, you can say her art is she has realistically proportioned people. She didn't cartoon proportions too much. The cartooning came in the simplification of features. You know, that these are all about proportioned like regular people would be. And then they're just more simplified faces. And that's basically where the cartooning comes in, where she's not intricately trying to, remap faces.
Yeah.
And the Scott McCloud theory is that when you simplify the face, that allows you to identify with that character more.
Nice. Yeah, it's so charming, and I think that there's quite a bit of animals in this as well. So I think the success of having the animals, in that there are characters whose heads are animals, right, and then there are Egyptian god style. Yeah. I think. Can you find page 73?
I can. Just give me 1 second.
And then there are panels with animals in it, actual animals, like Wendy, who has the fox ears, can actually turn into a fox. And the cat, which goes to the school, which has it's wearing a tiny little cat uniform, but he is actually, he seems to be truly just a small pet cat.
Is this the page panel we're looking for?
That is. Oops, and I just lost my page.
I'm too off. I got it. Let me. 71, 72, 73. Here we go.
There we go. Yeah. So this one, I thought this was really interesting, because earlier on, Wendy expressed a distaste for dissection, and they were trying to, make it so that the students are signing a petition. They want to reintroduce dissection into the science classes. And Wendy's like, no, that's unethical. And, you get a moment like this where you see this fox catching a mouse. And that was Wendy doing some morning or some lunchtime hunting.
Yeah, it was cleaning the blood off of her blouse. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. This was the first moment when they revealed that Wendy could turn fully into a fox. I mean, it wasn't clear. They could just be kind of anthropomorphic characters that had animal characteristics, and we are never going to explain that. But this, told us she's like a lycanthrope, a were fox, or is it kitsune? Is that I hesitate to...
Kitsune, very close.
That far off. So anyways, there are all these characters that we find out little bits about. The magic powers don't come into play that often, but this is a case where it did. I took from that she was against killing when you didn't have to, and this was viewed as necessary killing. If you hunt and you eat it, that's one thing. If you're just killing it just to see what's inside, that triggered an ethical boundary for her.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a big thing that goes throughout the comic, are ethical boundaries, and sort of the, these are definitely these kids are all looking inward, right? They're all asking each other very big and like deep questions that you ask when you're in high school. So I I just like seeing this coming into play. There's also what Trixie looks like.
Yeah, we haven't shown Trixie yet, but yeah, there is Trixie, who is
Yeah.
an aspiring teenage model and lizard person. You don't have to choose, girls. You can be a lizard person and an aspiring model.
And an aspiring model.
Yeah.
Actually, well, speaking of Trixie, can you go to page 75? Since I think we're kind of nearby.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
We meet a character named Joni, who we never see before or after.
Right.
And she's trying out these sexy tricks from
Cosmo.
Oh shoot, hang on a second. This is the other one. Sorry about that.
Oh no, this is this is a comic book one.
Yeah, this was the comic book one. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. I know the panel you were talking about, but this isn't it.
Yeah. This was also a good moment too, though, that these these two kids connecting over oh, you like comics, and no, graphic novels, and sort of drawing a line between what graphic novels are and comics are, and then reading that in what has been compiled into a graphic novel, which came off of a comic strip.
Right.
It was getting very meta.
Yeah. You're like there was that scene in Scream where we're watching the characters on screen and they're sitting in the news van watching the characters on screen, and the killer is going to kill somebody, and the people in the van are going, look behind you, and then because they're on a tape delay, the killer's actually behind the people in the van, and people in the audience are now going, look behind you, and I went, it was just such, and I forgot he was watching the original Halloween. It was Kennedy's character. He was watching Halloween on the television, and he's watching a movie where he's going, look behind you, and they stacked it 3 deep and included the viewer in that. I always thought that was just such a brilliant piece of meta filmmaking. And I didn't pick up on that, but you're absolutely right that they're dissecting the media of a graphic novel and how it of comics. I'm not going to say graphic novel, but dissecting the media of comics. And we have a kind of a snobby approach of, oh no, you need to read graphic novels. You can't read comic books, which most graphic novels are. You're essentially right. They're collected comics. There are some that are original graphic novels that were written that way, and we read a lot of those actually. But the vast majority of them are just collections of the individual comics that he's turning his nose up at, and we're reading it in something that's even more piecemealed together than that, because it's a comic strip, where the story is coming at you in these bite-sized chunks, and so you can look at it and say, oh, there's obviously value in it, whether it's a comic book or a graphic novel or web comic. That distinction is very arbitrary, and this conversation felt very accurate from the mansplaining nature of the comic book universe. There's all sorts of guys explaining what real comics are to women that are collecting them. That felt so honest to me. It felt real.
Yeah. And then him also telling her that it was, exploitative towards women.
Yeah.
Something that she was enjoying about, it was clearly some kind of like an empowered woman type story. So it was definitely, I feel like that was a really awesome snake eating its tail moment. And then where I was saying to myself, look behind you. I'm reading the book.
That was great. I didn't pick up on that meta moment, but when you laid it out, I went, oh, that is really cool. It's a great, framework to think about it. And I enjoyed that. There were a lot of, like you said, the whole thing of her exploring her own ideas and thoughts as they came to her. It is, you have to be able to accept it for that. There are some of the strips that are not funny and not really giving you a story. They're just moments in time, that feel very honest and real. And we get the other stuff too, but I really enjoyed some of these panels or comics that were just day-to-day happenings in the school. They usually had some sort of emotional resonance, even if they didn't have a big story component. And just how these different kids were feeling. Yeah, there was a lot of times when the kids would be putting on one kind of brave face in front of their peers, and then the last panel would be them by themselves, looking sad or crying, or something like that. And it was like, there's a lot of heartbreak in high school. If you're in high school right now, just tough it out. You get to college, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter at all. College,
you're not everlasting. Just tough it out. I think I read a review in, I'm going to call it out, I think it was The Guardian.
Yeah.
And I was feeling pretty frustrated by it, because it was saying that some of these gags fall flat. Like there's panels that aren't even funny. And it
Yeah.
really seemed like it was completely missing the mark. You know, what you were saying is that this book is really funny. I would say
Yeah.
first and foremost, there's a comedic element,
Yeah.
but it's also a slice of life. And I think it also deals with a lot of honesty and a lot of honest emotions and, you know, conflicting feelings between how you want to be perceived, how you want to present yourself, and then who you truly are. Right. I think that's kind of the magic behind all the students having some kind of power, right?
Right.
Trevor with his laser eyes, and there's a kid who's invisible, and
Right.
you know, it's not they're not defined by those things. They're still trying to figure out who they are as people. There's
Yeah.
Trevor with his lightning bolt head.
With like, well, I believe this is Adam, who's Wendy's, sometimes boyfriend during the course of the book. What I liked about this panel, or was interesting to me about it, is that they're obviously grown to an enormous size. Neither of them display that ability anywhere else in the book.
Yeah.
But we're talking about panels that are not story driven or don't have that gag at the end of it. This was one of them for me. They're just sitting there and it looks like they're just enjoying being together in nature. And Trevor tries to say, run his rap lyrics by the guy. And he goes, maybe another time. And then they just sit there. I mean, there is no punchline to this, and that is completely okay. It was just this nice moment, and I appreciate that we have these sprinkled all the way through there. Most of the panels are funny. Most of them further the larger kind of story along a little bit. Although I do think this could be more revelatory towards Trevor, who we've set up to be kind of a bad boy and kind of a jerk. Here's an instance of Trevor, and there are these moments all through the book of Trevor being an okay guy and basically understanding that, hey, it's okay to just be quiet, not making fun of the idea that we need to be, quiet together and just, soak in nature and each other's presence, and I like that.
Yeah, he has another. So I think this is Evan, actually.
Oh, it's Evan.
Because Wendy's boyfriend Adam has like a rounder nose.
Okay.
Because Trevor has a couple other panels with Evan. There's another one where he a baby bird has fallen out of a tree, and Trevor is completely freaking out about it. Like he's having a pretty big emotional reaction to it, and Evan says, "You can't do anything about this," and the bird dies, and that's the end. And Trevor is devastated, and that's the lesson that is learned. It's just these emotional snapshots, I think, are super functional to who all the characters are.
Yeah.
It's on page 132.
132, I'm going.
Because that's another one where the last panel, you're like, oh man, then the last panel really comes in and hits you. Yeah, very, very sweet. And again, like, I'm gonna be looking at the line, the artwork again. How much she's able to convey with, this sort of like thick, loose line that she's using.
Mm-hmm.
Really minimal shading. She does a really great like dappled sunlight with so little. It reads so well.
I did notice we had some gradients towards the end of the book and stuff. I think, like I said, I think when she knew she was wrapping the series up, there was a little bit more time spent on the art and story to make it all more cohesive than it was when it's these kind of random thoughts and moments in time that do add up to be greater than the sum of the parts. I mean, it's, each individual moment is one thing, but when you add them up to paint this portrait of the school, of the students and everything, like that, scene with Trevor and Evan sitting there is informed by what we know of Trevor from before that. And without that context, I'm not sure that it has as much meaning or importance, but with that context, I think it has quite a bit. So let me see where we're at. What page were you looking for?
132.
132. Oops, I went one past it. Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, let me get us into a view where we can see it. There we go.
So the baby bird has fallen out of the tree. He says, Evan, do something. And Evan, of course, is supposed to be the kid he's just surviving through all time and to everything. He says, there's nothing we can do for it. And like, look at this poor kid. Like this is the bad boy who gets, scolded for making graffiti and,
Peas in the trash bucket in the office. He goes and asks where the trash can is, and they're complimenting him on how polite he is, and he pees in the bucket. Yeah, and yeah, consistently showing a complexity of character throughout this, that people aren't just one thing. They're not just, they can't be boiled down to simplistic terms. You have to, they're onions, to use your metaphor, and I believe Shrek's. People are onions. They have lots of layers going on, and Trevor, we get these moments of humanity sprinkled all the way through that make us not want to just write him off as a jerk, which would be really easy. He could have just been used as a force of nature for the other characters to react to, and never humanized at all. There would be no need to it. Instead, we get a more complicated picture of him, and I appreciate
let's go down one more.
Going,
because this is the button on this. How was school today? Fine.
Right.
And it's like that, this looks like maybe he's someone who works in the dorms or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but going to Catholic school, that looks like a priest to me.
Okay.
But it's not a Catholic school, so but that's my experience. Me projecting my own experiences into the book.
As you should. That's how one reads.
That's how.
But I love the juxtaposition of these two panels next to each other, like the wide shot of the loss under the tree, and then you don't get to see his face in the last panel, but he's clearly.
Well, I think we get this raw emotion over here. He is devastated, and this is the brave front that he's putting on, where he's not showing any emotion. This is what he's like around everybody else. Really underneath, he's got a much more complex emotional life. But this is how he thinks he has to present himself. Like he just doesn't care. Nothing's a big deal to him. And you see that there's a really empathetic human being underneath Evan's tough exterior that really makes the character a lot more palatable and makes me more invested in him than I would have been if he had been this, cartoon cutout character
bad boy.
Just the bad boy.
That's what drove me nuts about that comment, though, where it's like some of these gags fall flat, and I was like, this is not a gag that falls flat. Like this is like a deeply resonating emotional moment. Whoever that person was who wrote that article, anyway. And then if you could find page 41, I'm so sorry, that's what I was trying to think of earlier.
Okay. So just fill some time and I'll get to it. Okay,
cool. I'll set it up. I think that, there are, in the same way that comic book gag was, very, very meta, I think she finds great ways to bring in and speak to the modern world in the book. It's not like they're living in this bubble where there's nothing from the modern world. Like they have Pikachu in the background. They've got, the girls trick their teacher into thinking they don't know what a record player is, but they clearly do.
Right.
So this is Joni, who doesn't. Oh no, she's not Joni. Who's this girl? I don't think she gets a name. So she's trying out some tricks that she learned in Cosmo to the disgust of this boy. And then I want to see the cover of Cosmopolitan.
Yep, let's see her. Let me.
So. Look at these headlines here.
Yeah.
What he thinks: tight thighs, tight abs, shed 50 pounds in one day. Tight ass, something that looks maybe like an advertisement. Rwanda, 15 years later. And what I wanted to point out is that this happens a lot in magazines like Cosmopolitan, Marie Claire, where they'll put something that is of the utmost serious importance alongside tight abs. And what it does to like a young brain is it makes you think that what happened 15 years after Rwanda is as important of what he thinks, right? And all that kind of thing. So, what this girl has kind of put into her mind, like, it to me, it was such a great thing to put in like the corner of a single panel where it's like, you can see how deep they're thinking all the time, these kids are, but how on the same level, it's like, am I pretty enough to be a model? And like, is my modeling career going to start too late? Like they're getting a lot of mixed messages, like from the outside world that, might be messing with them a little bit.
Yeah. I remember it was like something that went around Reddit. They copied an article from Cosmo that was one of the sex tips from Cosmo, and as a guy, I read what they were telling them that guys were into, and I was going, "Oh, that will hurt so bad. That's going to be. I'm going to need an ice pack after that, and the date's over." But yeah, and I just thought it's just, they're selling. They need to sell like they have some secret that you don't know, so they go off into La La Land on that stuff. So that kind of resonated for me. I've never really read Cosmo. This type of surface scan of the cover as far as I've ever gotten into the magazine, but I probably have somewhat the reaction that he did between what I know about the magazine and then what I read in the headlines. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Cosmopolitan, but
well, I mean, just next time you're at an airport or at the grocery store, look at the cover, because that is what she captured here is so close to what reality is, where it'll say all kinds of things that don't mean anything, and then all like in one corner it's going to say something about Mexican cartels, and you're like, oh, what? Like, and it just it's an attempt to add validity to something that probably
well, it shouldn't have. For him, it killed the whole mood there. I mean, how far gone do you have to be for the guy to go, no, I don't want to make out anymore? Cosmopolitan ruined it for me. But those type of we have Teen Vogue is one that has come up for heroic girls in the past few years as having a lot of actually really good political content and things like that.
They're killing it,
and they're killing it. But it is also a teen fashion magazine, so we've shared on social media individual articles that are these more in depth. I am wondering what the surrounding content is for Teen Vogue. Vogue is, I guess, kind of a trade magazine for the fashion industry, so I certainly rank it at a higher, in a different place than I would something like Cosmo, which I think is very silly. But Teen Vogue was something I was fairly prepared to dismiss, because I always think teenage girls have enough outlets telling them they need to focus on their appearance. I didn't think they needed another one, but I've been very impressed with the type of stories that I read from Teen Vogue. So, they may not be perfect, and I know they hired an editor that got herself into hot water for stuff she wrote like 20 years ago or something like that. But the internet doesn't forget, so that was kind of an unfortunate situation. But it's so if you have to get your teenage girl a magazine subscription to some sort of fashion magazine, what I'm saying is Teen Vogue, it looks like the one to get. They actually have upped the game as far as treating girls with respect, and by that I mean just respecting that they have more going on than picking out the right lip gloss to go with their shoes or whatever. They are giving them really intelligent stories, learning about the world around them, encouraging them to be politically active. When I started Heroic Girls way back when, I never thought there would be a point where I was saying, you should go get Teen Vogue, but I recommend it all the time to parents now, because it's I've been so impressed with the content that they're putting out there for girls, and how they don't talk down to them, and they're not consumed with obsession over appearance and frivolity. I mean, even the fashion stuff has taken at a more serious level than something like Cosmopolitan, which I just, again, find very silly. But
bringing it back to the comic,
yes,
I think one of the things that Teen Vogue does is they approach fashion as art, right? As art and business, which I think is really great. It's not just like what's in and what's out. There is a fashion show, a student fashion show in the comic SuperMutant Magic Academy, which Frances crashes and streaks across the runway to express her disdain for the fashion industry. And so that is also a very wonderful moment in the character building of Frances.
Yeah, Frances. If anybody ends up being slightly one note, it might be Frances, although we did get, she's just too cool for school character that is a provocateur and always trying to, goad people into a reaction. And we had that one strip where a teacher said, basically, this has all been done before, and you could see him just get deflated, and he would, there's what humanized Frances, is that just for a second you get to see that this is a carefully constructed persona that she wants to be, and that she's afraid she's not. There's a lot of that, and I think that's a lot of that in high school in general. That everyone's trying to put together this front that of somebody that's more put together, more worldly, better looking, better dressed than they actually are. They feel they are inside. That everyone's trying to. And everyone thinks everybody else has their stuff together, and I'm the only one that's a mess. And that's what I told my girls when they started going to high school, is that don't believe all the people that seem like they have all their stuff together. I know they're old. Stella's a freshman coming up, so they both of them will be in high school next year. There'll be kids that will say that, they get a reputation, they know all this stuff, they had sex, they drink and everything like that. And they said 90% of that is just them like trying to seem cool, because they're afraid that you'll find out that they have to have a 8 p.m. curfew and that their mom picks them up every day. So there's a lot of like kind of puffing up and bravado in high school, people trying to be cooler than they really are, I guess, or what they think cool is. And
what I think is kind of fun about this book is that these kids are all very woke. Like you can see that there's kind of this cross section between they've got jock characters and different types of harassments going on, but there's also fundamentally these are very modern Gen Z kids in this book. And towards the end at the prom, Wendy's offered alcohol, and the reaction is like, oh, do you want a swig? And then, of this little jar of whatever, XXX on the bottle, right? Yeah. And then when she hesitates, everyone comes jumping in to say but not if you're not comfortable, and not if this isn't what you want, and underage drinking is a choice. And and they pave the way for her to they leave the door wide open.
They give her that opportunity to say no in a graceful way. And here's the thing about me. I never grew to like beer, ever. Just never cared for it. I don't like the hops. There are other things I will drink, but I don't like beer. But when you're going through college and young adult life, everyone's constantly trying to push a beer in your hand. I've been through many parties where I just sit there and hold my red cup the entire dang party with the same beer, and it's sipping a little bit every now and then, just so people would stop trying to put a beer in my hand. So it's so I never started drinking at all. Yeah. And to this day, if I say I don't drink, people say oh, but how about wine? I'm like, no, I don't drink alcohol at all. And the funny thing is that now that I'm older, it's become less of a choice of oh, good for you for your health, and more of the assumption that I must be an alcoholic. So it's interesting how the reactions have been oh, you're a goody two shoes, into more you're making a healthy decision. And then now it's just kind of gone off the end of we respect your past and your needs. And I'm dang. Day by day, Viv, you're gonna make it.
Day by day,
every day, you reinvent yourself. Because beer is by far the prevalent drink, and I don't buy alcohol of my own volition. The drinks I do have is when I go to the main one is when I go to a comedy club and there's a 2-drink minimum. I will have one alcoholic beverage and one non-alcoholic, because I'm pretty much a lightweight at this point because I never drink. So And
now I know your weakness.
Yeah, alcohol and of course meth. No,
dark.
But no, it's a good amount of verite to the high school experience. Kids are super woke. You were mentioning the jocks that are kind of harassing and things like that. And though there was a scene in there, and I don't remember where it is because they're kind of toss away characters. There's 2 football standing there, and there is a woman holding a baby that had just come back, and one of the guys is sexualizing her, going, man, she looks good for having a baby. It wasn't even super sexualizing. He just said, oh, she looks really good. And then the other guy,
she still looks hot.
She still looks hot. And the other guy, jumps on him, for the other football player jumps on him for sexualizing, making it all about her appearance. She's more of a person than just what she looks like. That's wrong and everything. And then he kind of walks off. And then the last panel was the guy going, yeah, that baby's going to be really hot, though. It was just it was almost charming in its coolestness, how he didn't get any of the messages.
Yeah, it was very much just like dirtbag gonna dirtbag. Like
Yeah. What was your favorite character? Who did you like in the book?
I definitely think Evan was the most interesting, but he wasn't really part of the story. So if I had to say like someone who was in the story that made me smile,
Yeah.
Actually Trevor,
There you
did a
go.
lot for me. Like the moment at the tree, he's got these little moments of he gets called into the principal's office and he's got all this bluster, and then the
Yeah.
last panel is him crying in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he's just like, it's like, why'd you do it? And the only answer is that he's just kind of hurting inside.
Yeah.
I love this.
I was kind of flipping through to find things that we could share with people, and I came across this, and it reminded me how much I love Trevor, and what a great encapsulation of the character it is, and why we feel for Trevor. Here's Trevor being cooler than everybody else in the room, and Gemma here is painting a model duck. I have no idea why they're painting a model duck or what. No backstory on the duck at all, but she's doing that, and Trevor is just talking about how stupid it was, how she's wasting her time. It makes her feel smart and everything. You can just hear the voice in your head of him being condescending and jerky to her the entire time. And then Gemma gives this. You were talking about how woke the kids are. There's all these really deep philosophical answers. They seldom have a surface understanding of these type of things. They're really thinking about the essence of time and how it's all fleeting and everything's transitory, and they have all these you get the feeling they're reading like Locke and Sartre on the weekends. They really put some mental power into it. So here she is, and so he's just poking fun of it, calling her stupid and everything. She's a time waster.
See you later, time waster lover.
Yeah. So then the last panel is he's trying to make his own duck and he's not doing a very good job, and it's just kind of that dichotomy of the way Trevor is choosing to present himself to the world and how much not that person he really is. He can't. He's a guy that can't be honest with himself or with other people yet, but that seeing that about him makes you feel for him a little bit. You just hope that Trevor gets past the point where he feels like he has to put up this a performative front in front of everybody to act like he's cool. He could have, he evidently wants to, he could be sitting next to Gemma and getting duck making tips, and they could be doing it together and stuff like that. And he is so adamant that he has
struggle alone.
Yeah. That he adamant that he looks cooler than everybody else, that he's going to go do it at home in private. And it's a missed opportunity for him to,
and it's so interesting because Jillian Tamaki has said that she doesn't consider herself a writer, right? She's like, whatever writing she got from, high school English or whatever.
Right.
And, but I think that a less sophisticated writer probably would have thought of a scenario like this. And that last panel would have been, Gemma succeeding at making a duck and everyone gives her a round of applause, right? Because if you look at this could easily be framed around her. She's the one making the duck. She's getting bullied. She's the one who overcomes the bully. And so that last frame normally, or simply would be like, and success. I made the duck despite the people who said I couldn't do it or whatever, right? But she, in this situation, is the more holistic character. And, I think it's so brilliant to sort of turn that on its head, switch the perspective and say like, how did this affect the guy that was like shitting all over it? And why did he feel like he needed to do that in the first place? So
yeah. And that was the thing. Never go for the easy stereotype.
Yeah.
The characterization in this book is really, really good. There isn't a single character who doesn't have something more complicated than appears on the surface going on underneath, and we see it at different times. And I just realized we have. I was worried that I didn't have enough notes, and we have chewed through our time. We're here at the end.
Oh, sploops! I'm sorry.
No, we're good. We're good. It was a good conversation. I like our meandering through this book. It, again, without the strong narrative through line, there wasn't like a plot to discuss. We just had to discuss aspects of the book that we like. This is a super fun book. It's a book that, it's obviously for like teens up. There's a brief panel of toplessness in there but you're just like, oh, I guess we're not nothing exploitative at all. And it's midway through the book. So if if the kid can handle that without being, then you're going to be fine. This book is really good. It's interesting. It's about teenagers feeling real emotions, exploring real ideas. The emotion feels very honest. I will admit that the teenagers probably are more like college philosophy students in a lot of cases than high school students, but the emotions that they're feeling and the way they present themselves feels very honest and a very good portrayal of what high school is actually like for a lot of people. So that's my 2 cents. You want to toss in on the art one last time?
Oh, this is the art. To me, this is like the essence of cartooning, of illustration. It's capturing something in your own voice, in your own breath, and expressing it in this kind of way that like everything's coming through. And like, she's such a skilled artist. She's such a high caliber skilled artist. She has such a fine sense of color and line weight. So to see this kind of thing come from her, it almost feels like a peek behind the curtain, right? Like
right.
you're seeing elbow.
Yeah, that was what I was saying there earlier about like the like more the rougher panels. It's like I know what her finished product looks like when it's a book meant for publication, and it's a more traditional type of way of treating the medium. And then to see these quick sketches that she obviously dashed off, it's really kind of interesting to see. I feel like I'm getting a good glimpse at process that you don't always see. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the only other thing I would say is thank you to Vanessa for letting me borrow her version of this book, which is also that was the wrong page.
The sign?
Sign.
Oh, now I'm jealous.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Let's talk about next month. I'm going to throw up our thing. We are reading next month Dracula Mother Effer. I'm just going to say Effer. On the book title itself, it is F *** K-E-R. This is a book by Alex DeCampi, a female writer and of screenplays and of articles and of comics. And Erica Henderson, who the one book I know solidly from Erica Henderson she was the first artist and did the huge run on Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, a fantastic run on Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. She has this really, really unique artistic style that jumps off the page and very identifiable. She's got a voice. You can see it coming through her pencils. And this book won all sorts of awards, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's about Dracula surfacing again in modern day LA, and one person figures out that there are really vampires and they're really coming and is fighting back against Dracula. Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting, by the title and the cover, I'm guessing we're somewhere in like the kind of the blaxploitation genre type of thing. It has that kind of feel, but this is another one that I have not pre-read. I haven't read this one yet, so I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, going in blind.
Going in Love blind. It. No, that has worked out really good for me recently. I'm enjoying myself. So in another month, we're going to get another book by a female creative team. I believe it's a female protagonist, but again, haven't read it, so I can't really speak to that. And we will see you guys in 30 days. Goodbye, everybody.